You believe that every act of goodness will earn you respect, admiration, and loyalty. But in the cruel reality of human nature, the very gestures you think will raise your worth can instead lower it, making you appear weak, disposable, or unworthy of influence. Today, I will expose to you the 5 acts of goodness that instantly reduce your value in the eyes of others, so that you may avoid them and guard your power with the wisdom of Machiavelli. My friend, let me speak to you of a poison so subtle that most men drink it willingly, believing it to be medicine. It is the habit of apologizing. At first glance, it appears noble. A man who admits fault, who lowers his head, who says, "Forgive me," may appear humble and virtuous. Yet beneath the surface, this act, when repeated too often, is the mask of weakness, and weakness is the one disease that spreads faster than any plague. Understand this: human beings are not naturally merciful creatures. They are calculating, observant, and cruel when they sense an opening. When you apologize too much, you teach them something dangerous about yourself, that your will can be bent, that your heart can be crushed, and that your spirit can be subdued without effort. Each time you say, "Sorry," for trivial matters, for accidents, or for the mere discomfort of others, you are chiseling away at your own authority. What begins as a single apology soon becomes a habit, and habits define a man more than intentions. A ruler who apologizes for every decision soon finds that his subjects despise him, for they no longer see a leader. They see a servant begging for approval. A friend who apologizes endlessly is no longer respected for his kindness. He becomes a nuisance, one who has no firm ground beneath his feet. Even in the intimacy of love, the man who apologizes without limit ceases to be attractive, for desire clings to certainty and confidence, not to trembling hesitation. Consider the battlefield of life, where every man and woman struggles for dominance, status, and survival. In such a field, those who carry themselves with unshakable certainty are feared and admired. Those who stumble and rush to correct every step with apologies are seen as fragile reeds in the wind, ready to be snapped. And let me tell you, no one values a reed when the storm comes. They look for the oak. Now, let us examine the psychology behind this. When you apologize frequently, you believe you are repairing damage. Yet in truth, you are amplifying it. By drawing attention to your misstep, you ensure that it lingers in the mind of the observer. A mistake unnoticed becomes forgotten. A mistake apologized for becomes immortalized. And the more you bow your head, the more the observer's pride grows, for they see themselves elevated above you. Thus, each apology is not merely an admission of fault. It is a gift of power, a transfer of dominance, a silent confession that says, "I am lesser, you are greater." The wise man reserves his apologies for the rare and the monumental, for the times when silence would breed destruction. An acknowledgement is a weapon of control. An apology used with precision can indeed disarm an enemy or win loyalty. But like coins, its value depends on scarcity. If gold were scattered in the streets, men would trample it beneath their feet. It is the very rarity of gold that makes it precious. So too with apology, the fewer you give, the more weight each one carries. Imagine 2 men. The first apologizes for arriving late, for forgetting a detail, for disagreeing, for speaking too loud, for speaking too soft, for existing in ways others disapprove of. Soon he is seen not as kind, but as spineless. He is tolerated, but never respected. Now picture the second man, who carries himself with dignity, who makes mistakes but lets them pass as though beneath his notice. He apologizes only once, when the stakes are high and the eyes of many are upon him. That single act resounds like thunder, because it is rare, deliberate, and charged with power. People admire him, even in his humility, because it is strength choosing to bow, not weakness being forced to kneel. Thus, the lesson is clear. Constant apology lowers your value in the eyes of all. It breeds contempt, it exposes your soft underbelly, and it makes your worth dependent on the approval of others. If you are to preserve power, you must learn the art of silence, the mastery of indifference, and the strength to let small offenses dissolve into the air without acknowledgement. But take heed. Apology is not the only act of goodness that can betray you. There are other poisons, sweet to the taste, but fatal to the spirit. Just as the man who apologizes too much is despised, so too is the man who gives without discretion, showering others with gifts and favors until generosity transforms into entitlement. And it is there, in the act of giving beyond wisdom, that we encounter the next downfall of goodness. When a man believes that goodness lies in endless generosity, he walks blindly into a pit that few escape. To give without thought, to pour out favors as if your resources were inexhaustible, is not seen as noble, it is seen as foolish. For men do not value what comes too easily, nor do they respect the hand that grants without restraint. What begins as admiration for your generosity quickly turns into entitlement, and entitlement breeds contempt. Observe carefully when you give sparingly. With strategy, each gift is remembered, and each favor creates a bond of obligation. Men treasure what is rare, and they fear the moment they might lose it. But when you give excessively, your kindness becomes ordinary, expected, and unworthy of gratitude. Soon, they stop thanking you. Instead, they demand more, as though your role in their life is not that of a respected ally but of a servant whose duty it is to provide. This is the danger of indiscriminate generosity. It corrupts the receiver. A child spoiled by constant gifts grows restless, never satisfied, never disciplined to value effort. In the same way, adults spoiled by your ceaseless kindness grow resentful. They see no power in you, only weakness, for in their eyes, only the desperate give so much without calculation. Consider the ruler who distributes wealth freely among the people. At first, he is hailed as benevolent, but over time, the people grow accustomed, and what once was seen as generosity becomes their expectation. Should he ever refuse them, they revolt, for they believe he has betrayed them. His generosity, once his strength, becomes the very chain that binds him. A ruler who gives without limit creates citizens who no longer respect his authority, but instead view his power as theirs to exploit. In personal life, the story is no different. Friends who are given too much cease to be friends. They transform into leeches, measuring your worth not by your presence or wisdom, but by the gifts you provide. The woman who receives endless affection without balance begins to doubt its value, for the heart craves what is scarce. Even in business, the man who lowers his price too generously, who grants favors without resistance, is seen as unworthy of serious dealings. For his own actions declare that he does not value himself, and if he does not value himself, why should anyone else? There is a cruel truth here. Men admire those who hold back more than those who give freely. They may curse the one who withholds, but they respect him. For they see in him strength, discipline, and the ability to control his own desires. In contrast, they laugh at the one who cannot say no, who gives and gives, thinking this will earn him love. He becomes predictable, stripped of mystery, and mystery is the very root of power. To preserve the potency of generosity, it must be rare, it must be deliberate, and it must serve a purpose greater than the satisfaction of appearing good. When you grant a favor, let it be seen as a calculated choice, not a reflex. When you give wealth, let it be tied to loyalty, not squandered in the hope of gratitude. In this way, each act strengthens your position rather than weakens it. It is better to give less and command respect than to give endlessly and be despised. For men may forget the gifts you shower upon them, but they never forget the authority you command when you restrain your hand. The secret is not in how much you give, but in how you make others perceive the gift as a rare jewel, not a common stone. And yet, generosity is not the only form of goodness that destroys value. There is another, even more subtle, and it lies not in what you give, but in how you allow yourself to be used. For the man who is always available, who answers every call, who is ever present at the convenience of others, soon loses the aura of power that presence requires. It is this shadow of servitude, this constant accessibility, that leads us into the next act of goodness that lowers a man's value. A man does not only lose value by what he gives too freely, but also by how freely he gives himself. To be always available, to be present at every call, to appear whenever summoned, this is not a virtue, it is servitude. And servitude is the surest way to erode the aura that commands respect. Power does not lie in constant presence. It lies in scarcity, in measured distance, in the art of appearing when it matters most and vanishing when it does not. Understand this. People desire what they cannot easily possess. Their hearts are drawn to the rare, the difficult, the elusive. When you place yourself at their disposal, always answering, always showing up, you destroy that air of mystery. You make yourself common, and what is common loses its value, no matter how noble or good it may appear. Even gold, if scattered endlessly through the streets, would soon be trampled underfoot, for abundance breeds contempt as surely as hunger breeds need. Consider the ruler who sits not among the masses every day, but behind the high walls of his palace, emerging only when his presence carries weight. When he speaks, his words are treasured. When he appears, his presence shakes the ground. Compare him to the ruler who mingles too often with his people, who makes himself always available, listening to every complaint, answering every trivial concern. That ruler becomes ordinary, approachable, no longer feared, no longer revered. He has traded majesty for familiarity, and familiarity is the death of respect. In friendship too, the principle remains. The man who is constantly at another's side, eager to respond at every hour, soon loses the dignity of his company. His presence becomes a background noise rather than a rare melody. And when conflict arises, when loyalty is tested, he will find his devotion counts for little. For he has been too easy, too accessible, too much like a servant whose absence is not even noticed. Even in love, this truth is merciless. The lover who makes himself available at every glance, who bends to every desire, may think he strengthens affection, but in reality, he weakens it. For desire thrives on distance, on anticipation, on the hunger created by absence. A flame constantly smothered with fuel burns out, while one carefully fed grows fierce. The lover who is always present becomes predictable, and predictability is poison to passion. Mark this well. Scarcity elevates value, while abundance dilutes it. The man who appears rarely commands more in a single moment than the man who is always near in 1,000. Presence should strike like thunder. Unexpected, powerful, unforgettable, not like the constant drumming of rain that soon fades into background noise. It is not cruelty to deny yourself to others, it is strategy. Your time, your presence, your attention must be seen as costly, not cheap. When people know you will not always answer, they will value the times that you do. When they understand you cannot be summoned like a servant, they will guard your favor as if it were a treasure. And in their minds, you will grow, not as someone desperate for their recognition, but as someone who commands their respect simply by controlling the boundaries of his presence. Remember this lesson: men crave what they cannot control. The moment they sense they own you, the moment they believe they can reach for you at will, they begin to lose interest, to take you for granted, to treat your goodness as nothing more than an obligation. But deny them your presence, and they will chase you, they will think of you, they will respect you. For absence sharpens respect as surely as constant presence dulls it. Yet there is an even deeper danger tied to availability, one that lies not in presence alone, but in the way we respond to opposition. For what good is it to appear scarce if, in the moment of conflict, you clothe yourself only in kindness, mercy without strength, compassion without authority, forgiveness without consequence? These do not elevate a man's worth. They make him appear soft, harmless, and therefore unworthy of fear. And it is there, in the excessive kindness shown in conflict, that we uncover the next act of goodness that lowers your value. Mercy is a noble quality, but when it is offered without strength, it becomes a confession of weakness. In conflict, a man's true nature is revealed, and the eyes of others fix upon him to see whether he is to be feared or dismissed. When an enemy strikes, and you respond with nothing but kindness, the world does not praise you for your virtue. They interpret it as cowardice. The man who spares too easily, who forgives too quickly, who offers comfort in the midst of attack, is not admired. He is marked as soft, someone whose power exists only in words but never in will. Consider the general who enters battle with the intent of winning loyalty through mercy alone. If he spares every traitor, if he pardons every act of rebellion, he teaches his army a dangerous lesson, that betrayal carries no cost. Soon, his soldiers respect him no more than a gentle priest, for they do not fear his wrath. And a leader who is not feared is a leader already half dethroned. Mercy without punishment does not inspire love. It inspires daring, for men will attempt what they believe will cost them nothing. The same law governs personal dealings. In the realm of friendship, when a man allows himself to be mocked or insulted and answers only with a smile, he is not praised for patience. He is labeled weak, and men grow bolder in their disrespect. In business, when one accepts betrayal with open arms and refuses to impose consequences, the betrayer learns that deceit is profitable, that kindness is a door left unlocked. Even in love, where mercy often reigns supreme, the partner who forgives every cruelty, every slight, every betrayal, teaches the other that their loyalty is optional, their respect unnecessary. Compassion becomes an invitation for abuse. Understand the nature of power. It is not enough to be kind. One must also be dangerous. True mercy holds weight only when men know that cruelty is within your reach, yet you choose to restrain it. Without that balance, mercy is no more than surrender. Think of the lion. Its cubs are playful, even gentle. But their games are respected only because behind them stands the threat of the beast's claws and teeth. Remove the danger, and the cub's playfulness would be mocked as weakness. History is filled with rulers who fell, not because they were cruel, but because they were too merciful. Those who forgave rebellion without consequence soon faced rebellion without end. Those who refused to strike their enemies down when the chance was theirs soon found daggers at their own throats. Kindness untempered by firmness invites destruction, for it teaches men that you lack the will to protect what is yours. You must therefore learn to wield mercy as a weapon, not as a default. Grant forgiveness rarely, and only when it serves to bind loyalty or secure your position. Let your mercy be remembered not because it was constant, but because it was scarce, deliberate, and backed by the unmistakable knowledge that punishment would have been swift had you chosen otherwise. Then your mercy will be valued, for it is mercy from a man who could destroy, but who spares by choice. That is not weakness, that is power cloaked in grace. But most men do not understand this balance. They believe that goodness in conflict will win admiration, that turning the other cheek will elevate them in the eyes of others. Instead, it lowers them, for the world does not admire what it does not fear. And in this lowering of value lies the cruel truth. When you show excessive kindness in conflict, people cease to take you seriously. They treat your presence as harmless, your authority as hollow, your goodness as the mask of a powerless man. And yet, there is a deeper layer still, for beyond apology, beyond generosity, beyond availability, and even beyond mercy, there lies the most dangerous act of goodness of all. It is not in what you give, nor in how you forgive, but in why you do it. When a man begins to perform his goodness for recognition, when he seeks validation and applause for his virtue, he reveals the most fatal weakness of all, the dependence on others for his sense of worth. And it is here, in the act of seeking validation through good deeds, that we uncover the final way goodness lowers a man's value in the eyes of others. There is a subtle weakness more dangerous than over-apology, more poisonous than reckless generosity, more degrading than constant availability, and even more destructive than mercy without strength. It is the hunger for recognition, the thirst for validation, the quiet desperation of a man who performs his goodness not for principle, not for strategy, but for applause. This is the most fatal act of all, for it chains your worth to the opinions of others, and once men see that your value depends on their approval, they will strip it away from you at their leisure. Imagine the man who gives a gift, but not in silence. He gives loudly, making certain all are watching. He offers charity not to ease suffering, but to hear his own name praised. He does favors not because they serve a greater design, but because he wants the world to call him kind. At first, he was flattered. People clap, they nod, they say, "What a good man." But soon, the applause fades, and he must act again, greater this time, louder this time, for the hunger within him demands more, and what was once goodwill transforms into performance, until he becomes not a man of strength, but an actor on a stage, forever begging his audience not to leave. Understand this: people respect the man who does good without seeking credit, but they despise the man who thirsts for recognition. They sense his weakness, for dependence is weakness. When others see that you crave their praise, they know you are under their control, for your happiness, your confidence, your sense of worth rests not in your own hands but in theirs. And men, being cruel by nature, do not handle such power with grace. They will deny you the very recognition you seek, if only to remind you that you are beneath them. Consider the ruler who spends more time crafting his image as merciful than governing with strength. He is praised in songs, in speeches, but soon his people grow bold. They know he cares more about being seen as good than about enforcing his will. They exploit this, for a ruler who values approval cannot deny them. To withhold is to lose their praise, and to lose their praise is to lose his very sense of identity. He is trapped, a prisoner of his own need to be liked. Such a ruler is not feared, and when he is no longer feared, he is finished. The same law applies in the smaller battles of daily life. In friendship, the man who constantly reminds others of his loyalty, who expects applause for every act of kindness, soon becomes irritating. His friends begin to feel his presence not as a gift but as a burden, for they sense that he helps not for love but for validation. In business, the partner who seeks recognition for every small contribution is treated with suspicion, for he reveals that his motive is not strength, but approval. Even in love, when one lover performs endless acts of devotion while constantly demanding acknowledgement, affection turns to suffocation. The beloved grows wary, for what was supposed to be a gift feels like a transaction, a desperate plea for affirmation. The irony is cruel. The man who seeks validation for his goodness ends up despised, while the man who does good without display is respected. Silence in virtue is more powerful than noise in charity. To act rightly and say nothing is to command awe, for people see that your worth does not rest on their tongues. But to act rightly and demand recognition is to become a beggar at the table of opinion, and no beggar commands respect. You must learn this discipline to anchor your value in yourself alone. Perform goodness, if you must, with strategy, with control, with the aim of strengthening your influence or binding loyalty. But never perform it for the shallow reward of applause, for applause fades quickly and leaves you weaker than before. Respect endures only when others sense that you do not need them to validate you. Independence of worth is the foundation of power, while dependence is the first crack that leads to ruin. And yet, my friend, the cruelest truth remains. All these acts of misplaced goodness, apologizing without end, giving without discretion, being always available, showing mercy without strength, and seeking validation through deeds, spring from the same root. They are not failures of action, but failures of perception. They reveal a blindness to the true nature of men, a belief that people are noble when in fact they are selfish, calculating, and quick to exploit weakness. To master life, you must see through these illusions, and once you strip away the comforting lies of goodness, you will be prepared to embrace the harder truth that respect is built not upon virtue alone, but upon perception, fear, and the art of controlling how others value you. So now you see the cruel paradox of goodness. What the weak call virtue, the strong recognize as a mask that hides surrender. To apologize endlessly, to give without measure, to make yourself ever present, to show mercy without strength, and to crave recognition for every deed. These do not raise you in the eyes of others. They lower you. They strip you of the mystery, the authority, and the power that commands respect. Remember this: men admire goodness only when it is bound with strength. They praise kindness only when it is scarce, measured, and given from a position of power. The world does not honor those who beg for approval, but it bows before those who command respect through discipline, scarcity, and control. Do not fall into the illusions that have ruined countless rulers, friends, lovers, and leaders. Guard your presence, wield your kindness with caution, and let your worth be anchored in yourself alone. For in the end, it is not goodness that secures your value. It is the perception of power. And only the man who understands this truth will rise above the rest, unshaken, untouchable, and remembered not for his constant kindness, but for his unbreakable strength.